And good evening. I'm Jonathan Higgins.
I'm Rich Carlson.
And we're the Scanner Guys. And good evening to everyone. Dale, thank you so much for being our technical director tonight. We appreciate that. With our 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We appreciate that, Dale, this evening. So as we mentioned, what was it, last broadcast? Dayton Hamvention, we want to reiterate that again in case you haven't been paying attention at all and been under a rock. The Dayton Hamvention has been postponed for this year, hopefully making a triumphant return in 2022.
I hope so.
Hope so. That would be good, to start that up again. But we've got a really cool show. So, Rich, we let the audience pick the topic of discussion.
Yep, sure did. That's we did that survey, and the results are in.
And the results are in case you missed that, this is the results. Programming tips for multi-radio setups. Now, I'll give you a little bit of background on the results. So, it was getting a little neck to neck with that and the SDSs, talking about the SDSs. So, and then multi-radio.
Which way did you vote?
I didn't end up voting. Oh. I figured, I figured if I had to break a tie, I would have done it at that point. So I reserved my vote. But multi-radio setups came in the lead. It actually pulled away. I thought, the STSs, because people love when we talk about the STSs. The Radio Jargon is a show that we did a while back, so we were going to revamp it and talk a little bit more about that. But that's definitely, the three shows definitely got a lot of votes, but this one got all the votes.
Cool. So let's do this show then. How's that?
Sounds good. So let's, whoops, I went too fast. So we want to make sure that you follow, like, and subscribe to the Scanner Guys social media. By the way, we're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Of course, we're on YouTube, so you can do that right now. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, and then once the show is over, Dale said he voted like in Chicago.
Yep, early and often.
Early and often, that's for sure. So definitely follow the social media that we have there: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at the Scanner Guys. And did you guys know that we have a newsletter? We do have a newsletter. You can subscribe to that at thescannerguys.weebly.com. If you put in the Scanner Guys into Google, just that, it'll load up our YouTube channel, our website, everything. So if you can't remember the Weebly part, type that into Google. So we are going to be doing some changes come probably spring with some content. And we're going to be putting together, Rich and I are going to be putting together a survey. And we want to see what you guys are looking for content and so on. So what we want to do is we want everybody to sign up for our newsletter, and once we release the survey, we will email it out, and then you guys could do it at your own leisure. And we'll give you a window of time so we can then look at the results and then decide what we're going to do with various things with the show. But we're looking for your input. This show is, we love doing it, and basically you guys help us with making the show better and better all the time. So we're looking for your input. So definitely sign up on our website under newsletter, thescannerguys.weebly.com. And then we only email, if anything, once a month. So it's not like we're going to email you every week.
There is a certain ham radio distributor that sends 4 and 5 emails a day. And it just gets too much. So we keep it down to a dull roar.
Yes. But yeah, and we'll also tip you off when we do send this email blast so you guys know to look in your email, do the survey, and then we know that you guys have seen it all. So excited about tonight's topic. let's continue to dive into it as I lose my mouse on the screen. So tonight we're going to talk about programming tips for multi-radio setups. That's programming layout suggestions. So we're not going to teach you tonight how to physically program a 996 or an STS. We're going to kind of tell you how to program the radios so you get the most out of it, action-wise.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's take a look here. I see you looking up in the. Is there?
Yeah, I'm my rail cams I have up on the screen here just dumped out on me, so I'm trying to reload those.
Okay, so computer programming. So computer programming plays a huge role, and we talk about a lot Butel software because it's out there. Think of computer programming. It's never locked into stone. Do you remember when, Rich, you had to manually program the scanner and how much a tedious task it was?
Well, you're not old enough to remember having to buy crystals for every channel, but that's when a 4-channel scanner was actually a practical thing. Getting that first programmable scanner, my first one was a Bearcat 20 or a 210, and I think it had 10 channels or 8 channels, something like that, which you could actually program with a keyboard. And that was such a revolutionary thing. We could not have imagined what it was like here. But back then, there was no computers to program it. So it made it even doubly hard to program a lot of channels. And now that, we have thousands and thousands of channels, the only way to practically do it is with a computer.
So the thing what I mean about that bullet point is your programming is never locked into stone. Yep. So the great thing about computer programming is if you don't like something with the programming, the way it's laid out, you can easily update it in the software and then re-zip it to the radio with a different configuration.
Yep.
And the other thing with programming software, which brings us to the second bullet point, is different configurations. You could do one layout and you could have another layout and you can try different things. It's not like you're hitting, what was it, 2-9 and hold?
Oh.
And then reprogramming the whole radio again?
Yeah.
You're not having to do that. And the other great thing about being on the computer is you could save your programming files. So you can have option B, and option A, and option C, and then you can figure out which ones you like.
Yeah, and it's so much easier now to do it, this way than it ever was before. So.
And Rich, the biggest thing that we have now that we didn't have before, the third bullet point.
Oh, radio reference. We had nothing like that in my original Crystal days. And it was me and a couple of my friends who had printed lists. And thank God we had access to photocopy machines. And, we would make these printed lists. I would type them up on an IBM Selectric at work. And we would distribute these to my 4 or 5 buddies that helped us with the research. We had our own frequency list. And it wasn't until maybe the mid-'80s that we were able to get onto a computer. And then it wasn't until the 90s that Radio Reference came around where there was a central clearinghouse for all this information.
And the huge thing about that is if you're programming your scanner, you want to do your research first. Mm-hmm. Let's say, for example, when I moved from Massachusetts, I pretty much had the lay of the land of Massachusetts. When I moved here to North Carolina, it was a totally different ball of wax. I was constantly going to Radio Reference. Okay, so they're on this, these people are on that, these people are here, and it's trying to figure out, how do I want to configure the radios? And I'm doing my research on Radio Reference to figure out, okay, so they're on the 800 system with these people are on a different system, trying to be able to piece it all together. So Radio Reference, it gives you that visual to be able to do that research, to be able to kind of plan out how you want to tackle, the programming in your radio.
Yeah, it's, I did the same thing. I moved a few years back from the Chicago area, which I knew like the back of my hand. I wrote the book, literally. I wrote the book on scanner frequencies in Chicago. If you go back in history, you'll see the Scanner Master Guide to Illinois and I was the main editor of that, and there were several of us that worked on it. And I knew that stuff. And I came to Arizona, and I kind of understood how things laid out around here because I'd been coming here for 30 years. But I hadn't lived here, and it was quite a bit different than it was in Illinois. So, without radio reference, I would not have been able to get things figured out. And then I was able to submit to Radio Reference some of the stuff that I found to update their information.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's the thing with when you live at some place and you visit someplace, it's two different stories. I mean, that's living there, you're going to want the radio to be configured a certain way because that's your home base.
Yeah, and it's going to be totally different than anything that you've done before since you've never lived there before.
The other bullet point is thinking outside of the box. You want to, all of us have different radios, some of which are older than others, some of which could be different makes or models. How to use what you have and making the best of it. I mean, a lot of people may have a digital radio and an analog radio, and their whole area is digital.
Yeah.
Then you look at what type of analog stuff do I want to get into? Let's put use to this analog radio.
Yeah, and that's a great show topic for the future too, is what to do with your old radio when it no longer works for your main stuff. What do you do with your analog scanner?
Yeah, and that's the radio that's going to be put aside. And this day and age is going to be your analog radio. It's going to be, okay, so I've got this radio, works great. I don't want to part with it. I mean, things that we mentioned in previous broadcasts, aviation, railroads, if you're next to the water, maritime communications.
Yep.
I mean, those are different aspects of the hobby that you can kind of dive into and see if you like. Dip your toe into that water and see if you're interested.
Yeah, the water's warm. Come on in.
And the last one, and you just mentioned it a little while ago, Rich. 4 channels on a radio.
Yeah.
Look what we got now.
40 years ago. Yeah, nowadays 4 channels won't get you, won't even get you the trunking system.
I mean, we'll look at the old standby, BCD 996. I don't even need to put XTP2 or T. Mm-hmm. It stayed consistent. 25,000 channel capacity.
That's going to pretty much take care of just about anything you need.
So
if you need more than 25,000 channels, you've got bigger problems.
So that means with that radio, we look at that. So it's 25,000 channels. It has the capability of doing 99 systems. Guess what you can do to your programming? Spread it out.
Yeah. And with the one neat thing about the way the unit in memory works is it's not a problem to put the same channel in more than one system or group, and then you can turn on those different systems and groups whatever your mood swings that particular day. So, have a Wednesday group and a Thursday group and a Friday group, and you can do anything you want to. You got so much memory. It's like having a huge hard drive that you can have multiple copies of the same file.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, with that huge memory, and we've talked about this during our storm shows, is you got a storm coming in, have in your memory and the scanner, don't scan it all the time, but when you need to, the emergency management, the highway departments, the various things that are coming into play because of a snowstorm or a hurricane. You're not going to be, more than likely, you're not going to be scanning that throughout the year. But when an incident occurs or when an incident is coming, just having that as one click away on your scanner is a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah. I have I used to, when I was writing a thing about the Bearcat 780, remember it had 10 banks of 50 channels each. And one of the things I wrote was save a bank for the playground. And so basically it's stuff that you can put in there that you're not always going to listen to, but when you get the mood to do it, you press that in there. Or when that that brown stuff is hitting that spinning thing. Put that in there, and you can turn that group on and listen to what's going on. So
exactly. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, all this is going to be based on where you live in the country as well. What type of incidents you're going to get. So that's a little bit of computer programming. Gives you the creative freedom of doing all these things. Yep. And you're not manually typing it in. So take advantage of the technology.
Yep. You don't have to, when the stuff's hitting the fan, you don't have to reprogram the radio and type in all these frequencies. They're already there. You press 4 and they're there. That's it, you know? You don't have time to reprogram your radio when when your window's being blown out by the tornado or the hurricane is hitting. You just press the number 4 and you're, they're closing down the highway. Time for me to go. You know?
Yep. Or that snowstorm. You're deciding whether or not you're going to work from home or you're going to go into the office today. You can program in, some of the channels that you don't monitor. Let's say you don't monitor the State Police or Highway Patrol, or you don't monitor the DPW. Or the other thing too, or the local school bus company. That'll tip you off whether or not your kids are going to be going to school or not.
Yep. Yeah, now obviously a lot of this stuff is changing because of COVID and people staying home all the time. But eventually, one of these days, things are going to start going back to normal. Hopefully, we're kind of on that upswing now. So, we'll see where that goes. But even if your kids aren't in school, knowing what's going on outside before you actually step outside is going to be huge.
Yes, that's for sure. It's certainly going to be a huge benefit, and that's why we put together this slide for computer programming is a huge thing. And yes, Joe, remember the quick keys. We, I really feel like we have to do a quick keys show. So you and I are going to have to spend a couple of weeks, familiarizing ourselves so we can talk about quick keys.
Yeah, for those of you that are not aware, Jonathan and I are both negative fans of quick keys. I don't like quick keys. Jonathan, I'm not going to speak for you, but I don't think you do either.
I haven't used them. The thing I like is, for the most part, I try to keep on a 996 type of radio. I tend to keep within systems 1 through 0 for the most part.
Yeah.
So I keep myself within that constraints. As for a database scanner, I go into the menu and turn on and off the favorites list I want.
Yeah. I mean, I have used quick keys in the past on my 996 and BCT 15s, that type of stuff. But yeah, you're right. It's so much easier to use the menu button on a database scanner, at least for me. But yeah, quick keys do have their place. I'm just not a huge fan of them. It's like, are you a Ford guy or a Chevy guy? Well, I'm neither. I'm a Honda guy. So.
But that's
and you drive a Toyota.
Toyota, so. Yeah. But yeah, that's definitely that there. So we will definitely address the quick key thing, and then maybe
we'll have Joe come on the show with us.
Yeah, definitely. He can kind of tell how to do it on each one of these radios and how to get it to work for you, and maybe he'll convince one of us to go the quick key route. Let's take a look at this slide. So this is typically how most people would set up their radio. A lot of times when you have multiple radios, you're trying to find a balance in between the communications. The two things you want to keep in mind is, you don't want to be blasted with radio transmissions every 2 seconds, and you also don't want to have moments of silence for hours either. So you're trying to find that balance, enough of activity to keep you entertained. And also, when you have multiple radios, you have a programming balance where you can kind of listen to the radio transmissions regarding an incident from start to finish.
Yeah.
So you can kind of follow along as it's initially dispatched, officer arrives on scene, or fire department activity, it gets toned out. They arrived on scene. What is the outcome? What is the end all of the story? Because you think of when we're listening to a scanner, we're following a story. Each one of these calls is dispatched out, and sometimes you can hear the result of it. Let's say it's a car crash, for example. So there's a car crash on the highway. On the police side of things, you're going to know how many cars are involved, what lanes are blocked. On the fire department side of things, you're going to hear, what's going on with the cars. Is there a vehicle on fire? How many people are injured? So you're learning all the things of the incident, and it's kind of following the story. So you're hearing what's going to be on your 6 o'clock news real time on the scanner.
Yeah.
So with Scanner A, it's, typically I would put a large city or large town, because it's going to be busier. And then on Scanner B, you could pepper in some smaller towns, and maybe your local state police that's, a certain stretch of that highway that runs through your area. Maybe
Right.
monitor just that particular talk group or channel. I mean, what do you think of this kind of layout, Rich?
It's a great way to balance out this stuff and this stuff, because normally you're going to be listening to this stuff. So you turn this scanner on, and then when stuff starts happening, or it's rush hour and you might want to start listening to what's going on in the highway, you turn on that scanner, or whatever works for you. This is one way of doing it, and that's not a bad way of doing it. You set up one radio for your town and one radio for the surrounding towns, and normally you want to listen to what's going on in your town, but and then when things get bigger, the neighboring towns are coming in to help. So it gives you a way to just kind of tweak it, and the only thing you got to do is tweak the volume control to take your priority from this to that.
Yeah, and typically, let's say if Scanner A was your hometown, that volume's going to be up a little bit higher. And then you're going to have the other scanner just loud enough so you're able to hear it. But if something interesting is happening in a neighboring town, like Rich said, turn up the volume a little bit.
And a lot of it is not so much the content on the second scanner, it's the tone of voice. You hear things and you hear the routine stuff. Okay, this is going on, blah, blah, blah. And then when the sharp voices start to get really excited like this, that's when you start listening to that second scanner and say, uh-oh, something's going on. Mm-hmm. Having spent years as a dispatcher and spent years as a firefighter and a police officer, the tone of voice is everything. And I hear a call going out, and it's like, yeah, okay, there's a report of a guy with a pistol over here. It goes out like that. It's like, okay, it's not that crazy, but okay, we got a report of a man with a gun is doing this. It's that tone of voice that makes a huge difference, and you pick up on that even subconsciously. And we'll hear a lot of chatter on the other channels in the 911 center, and when the other towns start going like that, we hear the tone of voice versus the actual content to get our attention.
That's for sure. Let's take a look at another example. So how many of us are dealing with regional dispatches or large cities? Now, with the modern age of trunking systems, these agencies could have 12 channels. Let me just widen this out just a little bit more so everybody can see the amount of talk groups that are there. You're looking at a fire channel, administrative channel, a state fire channel, a fire marshal channel, a fire emergency channel at the top of the list there. So, and then you have operations channels, which are operations 12 through 23 in the system. And then each station has its own tactical channel. So typically we've gotten used to the type of dispatching. So what'll happen is it'll tone out on the fire dispatch channel, and they'll say, blah, 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 truck such, 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 respond to XYZ for this incident. You're assigned fire operations 14 and 15.
Yeah.
So then they go over, and any communication on scene goes to 14 or 15.
Yeah, it's crazy the amount of channel assignments they have on trunking systems. And if the system is robust enough to support multiple operations like that, they can get really crazy really quick if there's enough channel capacity to handle several big incidences. But something like this, it seems like every firefighter's got his own channel.
For the most part. So this is my thought process for fire buffs. Mm-hmm. 2 radios. Radio 1, you're always monitoring the fire dispatch, the county and state local ops channels, so you don't miss a beat. Radio B, you scan all those fire operations channels or those TAC channels.
Yep.
Now, let's say there's a call that comes over dispatch that you're really interested in. You want to monitor it. So what you do is, let's say they assign them Fire Ops 15. So once they switch over to Fire Ops 15, hit the hold button. Guess what? You'll be able to follow it all the way through. And plus, on Radio A, if something else comes in better that you want to listen to, either put the radio back into scan or switch over to the other Fire Ops channel.
I do the same thing back of me. Back when when I lived in Illinois, a lot of our mutual aid and fireground operations and stuff were on conventional channels, and they were low power, handheld radios only. So I had one radio with just the fireground channels and our state emergency channel in it, and I left that volume kind of up. And when that radio started talking, there was something going on in my neighborhood, and that's that would get my attention. And that worked out really, really well.
Yeah, and this is just a simple programming. I mean, you're looking at it, Rich, this is a 2 radio setup.
Yeah.
This is no big deal. I mean, if you've got 2 radios that support, let's say, a digital trunk system or an analog trunk system or whatever you're monitoring, you could easily divide up your programming. You're not missing what's going on throughout the whole entire county or city because you're still monitoring the fire dispatch where everything's dispatched out. Yeah. And then the other thing, too, is you're monitoring, those fireground or ops channels or tactical channels. And the other thing, too, with dedicating a radio to the fire dispatch and the county or state ops channels, you're going to know if something juicy is going on in a neighboring county.
Yeah. And if they're using conventional channels, meaning not trunked, especially if they're still analog, which most conventional stuff is these days, you can do that with the lower priced radio. The dispatch is on the trunking system. The fireground is on VHF. You can buy a cheap scanner to listen to the fireground stuff and keep your expenses scanner for the digital trunking system.
Yeah, I mean, this is all things. You may already have the tools that you need in the toolbox to do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that old scanner gathering dust might still work for the fireground system.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. I mean, this is a prime example for what I call for fire buffs. I mean, a lot of you out there, may just monitor police, or some of you may monitor fire, and this is just finding a configuration that works for you to get the most bang for your buck.
Yeah, and you don't have to be a fire buff to do this. I listen to aircraft a lot. And that's why I got multiple scanners, because I listen to a lot of different stuff in aircraft, but there's so many things out here that it's not practical to have just one scanner on it. So I have one scanner for emergency channels only, the 121.5, the 343 or 343.0, the 243.0, the emergency channels, that only squawk when there's really something important to listen to. And then I have another channel for the chat and the tactical operations for the local Air Force facility, and then a couple channels for other interesting, another scanner for a couple interesting channels, so that when one starts squawking, I can hone in on that and still hear the other stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable just being able to find that groove. And, this is the whole subject of this show tonight, is we're trying to help you guys think a little bit more out of the box and be able to get, more bang out of those scanners that you may have. I mean, a lot of you, I saw a few comments at the top of the hour. This show is going to be great. I have 5 scanners. This is going to give me some layout ideas, to be able to do things. We're showing just the base. We're just showing like a two-scanner operation. Just
Yeah.
think of if you do have, like something like with Rich, where you have multiple radios, you can really peel back and really divide up that programming, but most of us don't have a ton of radios. So how to do this on a small scale, and that's usually where, wouldn't you agree, Rich? In a small scale, this is a little bit more tricky because you're down to 2 or 3 radios, so you got to really get creative with this to be able to get the most balance out of the radios.
Yeah. And that's why these scanners that have thousands and thousands of channel memories come in handy. And like you said in the slide before, if you have both radios programmed the same, but one set up on these channels now and one set up on those channels now, and then if you're holding in on this, you can turn those other channels back on the other radio, so you can make the most out of your 2 radios. Where I would use 5 or 6, you can do the same thing with 2 or 3 radios because you have that flexibility, and you can turn on the Fireground channels on your dispatch radio, and when you're honed in on one Fireground channel over here, in case there's another Fireground channel being used. So yeah, it gives you the flexibility to have both radios set up the same, so that you can revert one to another use when the other one is busy or something else.
All right, so let's take a look at our next slide here. And this is a bit of a pet peeve for me on Radio Reference. This particular city here, everything is grouped together in one group. Mm-hmm. And this can be a bit of an issue with a database scanner because it's all going to be clustered together under one thing. And let's say you want to monitor, various parts of the city, you would have to create a favorites list. What I've done is, this is a city that's near me. What I've done is I've broken this out so each region has its own favorites list. This is a big city, so I don't want to be hit with all this, but there could be a certain thing that happens in a part of the city I want to listen to that I don't always listen to. So what I would recommend doing, you could see Central, Freedom, Independence, North, South, Providence, all the various sections of city where it's broken out to districts, is to create micro favorites list or micro scan list if you're on the Whistler side of things, or on the Uniden side with the dynamic allocated memory system, you divide this out into groups on the scanner under one system, where you basically can chop it up a bit, or you could even do it with systems. You could just have it one dedicated system for each one, and you could do it that way. So breaking out each division, the first bullet point, which I covered, into its own favorites list or scan list, monitor the areas that you want to hear, and then have the other areas in this, yet again, Rich, big memories, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, having it available in case you need it in the scanner. Big memory. So if, let's say something, you don't monitor the, Hickory Grove division, and something's going down in Hickory Grove, you're not going to be wanting, I got to connect up the scanner to the computer, and I got to do all this. If you already have it in there, you can go in there, pop it on, or hit number 4 like you used before, pop it on, and you're done. And that's
I wouldn't be able to pop number 4. You'd pop number 4 because you have quick keys. I would go in the menu and hit set scan selection. So.
Yes. So with my 536, I would go into the favorites list in this case.
Yeah.
And
we're never gonna live that down.
No. The other thing with doing this as well, if you're using this in a mobile setting, for example, so each one of these, I'm going to give you a little bit of background because both Rich and I are Radio Reference database administrators. So the way this is shown on the screen is all this is going to have the same latitude and longitude and center point and radius. When you break this out and you take something like the Butel software and you find latitude, longitude of each district, center point, guess what's going to happen on your scanner when you do a little bit of work? When you drive to these certain divisions, it's going to turn those things on and off if you have smaller radiuses around it. So let's say you don't want to get hit with the whole entire city when you enter it. You want to be able to hear the closest districts to you. And this is where that also works into play too. That's what I've done on my scanner. When I enter in the city, I basically have everything separated out. So, so looking at that, that's, it's going to be helpful twofold with that.
Yeah, if you go in and fine tune your geography, you can do that. If you're not into location based scanning, that might be, then you're better off with the quick keys. But if you are in the location based scanning, don't be afraid to fine tooth your geographics on the systems and groups and stuff that you have in there. It's going to take a little bit more work, and you're going to learn all about latitude and longitude. But once you get that down, it's not that hard to do, and it can be very beneficial.
Yeah, so this is another thing. I mean, with with radio reference, sometimes you gotta kind of break things out because whoever is the system administrator for that region, they may have conchunked everything all together, and you may want to pull it apart. So let's continue on here. Oh boy, we've got some radios on the screen now. We got 3 radios on the screen, and this is where we're going to kind of dive into tips on favorites lists and scan lists and cloning programming. Why the heck would we want to clone the programming? We're going to go through that in these bullet points. So create smaller favorites lists or scan lists. Mm-hmm. Regional dispatching in larger cities split police channels into its own favorites list. Break towns into its own individual lists. This gives you the ability, like Rich and I both love doing with our SDS or Home Patrol type of scanners, is going into the menu, popping on that favorites list for that particular area that may be seeing some action. Yeah, and
you can do that, especially if you've got multiple radios of the same type or that are compatible. So if you've got an SDS 200 and a 536, the files are compatible, so you can clone those to each other. So if you've got a 996 XT and a 996 P2, same thing. You can clone them back and forth to each other.
Which brings us to bullet point number 2. Why the heck would you want to clone the favorites list on both radios? So the example here, we show 2 536s. So we're going to, what you're going to do is, let's say, for example, your police department and fire department are working an incident together. They're both a part of the same favorites list. If you clone it on one radio, you could pull up the favorites list for that town and then monitor the police channel. And then on the other radio, you can monitor the fire channel, and you don't miss a single thing that's going on. Or that's one example. The other thing, too, is with programming, you can mix and match at this point. So let's say you want to move somebody over to the other radio, Radio A, that you were running on Radio B because Radio B is too darn busy, and you're missing calls on that radio, and Radio A is quieter, you move them over. I mean, that's the thing. With favorites lists, they're text files. We've got these 8 gig SD cards. Yep. Text files don't take up hardly any space, and you could put in dozens and dozens of favorites lists. That's why you could break it down to town for a favorites list.
If you take a look at the file on your SD card on your 536, your Home Patrol, your SDS type scanner, if you take a look at the file structure on there, if there are no recordings on your SD card, chances are you have less than half a gig of data on your memory card. And that includes the nationwide database, the standard files that are necessary to make the radio work, and a couple dozen favorites lists. And you're using less than half a gig. There is no way you're going to fill up a 4 gig, much less an 8 or a 16 gig memory card with favorites lists. There's just no way it's going to happen. you don't have time to create that many favorites lists to fill up your card. The only way your SD card is going to get filled up is if you're doing recording, and that can fill up pretty quickly then. Same thing with a BCT 15 like shown there, or a 996. They have thousands and thousands and thousands of channels, and it doesn't when you go in to see how much stuff is in your radio, it doesn't tell you how many channels, because that is effectively unlimited. It tells you how much of a percentage of your memory is used. And I have never gotten a radio that's more than 20% full, and that's by programming in multiple states and statewide systems and all kinds of crazy stuff and everything I can think of. And I've never gotten more than 20%.
The same thing with me. When I was up in Massachusetts, I had in the truck radio, I had all of New England and parts of New York, New York State. If I was over in that, that part of Massachusetts or Connecticut, I could kind of hear over there. Yeah. And it just was, I didn't max it out, like you said. And I had all of New England. So basically heading far, well beyond Bangor, Maine, all the way down 95, from beyond Bangor, Maine, all the way down 95, and then coastal Route 1. Then I had every city and town in Massachusetts, every city and town in Connecticut and Rhode Island. I had most of all is southern New Hampshire, and then a good portion, like along the corridor, the highway corridor in Vermont. And I didn't max it out.
I lived in the Midwest, so I lived in Illinois. So I had the statewide systems for Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Minnesota, which are 4 of the biggest statewide systems in the country in there. Plus every county in Wisconsin, every county in Illinois, the local channels, every county in Michigan, and every county in Minnesota, because I spent a lot of time traveling in those areas in there, and I still had nowhere near the capacity in there.
And that's just don't be afraid to use up some memory, because you got plenty of it. The other bullet point we have here is splitting your favorites list in half. So you run certain favorites lists on Radio 1, run some of your favorites lists on Radio 2, and another common theme that Rich and I hit upon is the next bullet point. You coined it as the playground.
Yep.
Standby list for storms, major events, and etc. Let's say you have like a major event, like a music festival or something like that, and these ops channels come into play. Or, for example, you're in an area where there's a big NASCAR track. It's a part of the Cup Series, and then all these operations channels come into play. You may want to have these standby favorites lists or scan lists on hand, so when that time of the year comes, of course, double check it before the event. Make sure you have all the latest channels. If you can foresee the event coming, make sure there's no new channels available. And the other thing too, when you're running, in this case, and we're probably going to hit this bullet point again, is the alert light.
Yeah.
Just being able to, granted, Rich, you can look at the screens, but if you have a light, that's indicating, it's coming from that radio.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I have to do that more than I have. I do have some alert lights programmed on there, but it's nowhere near as many as I should. And that is a huge, huge, huge feature that can, if you've got multiple radios. And it really does. I wish what I wish they would have done is I wish they would have set up a carrier on light, so that you could set up so that when the radio talks, that light would pop up. And I've installed carrier lights on some of my scanners, but it's laborious, and I don't like doing surgery on my scanners. But and it's that way. Anytime the radio talks, the light lights up. I just wish they had that on all scanners.
Yeah, because I noticed on the Uniden radios, it'll illuminate for a period of time, and then it won't stay illuminated. But if you, like what you said, if it was a carrier light, and the second that they were a constant of them transmitting, then you would know what it is right off the bat. So if you're not looking at the radio at that given occasion when it initially comes on, the light's going to be off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish that was a stayed on when talking, turn off when not talking. But it's like putting the Ethernet jack on the SDS 200 the wrong way. It's unfortunately that one, it got through the system.
Yeah, and that's something that we can definitely definitely recommend. And we've already talked about, we see that the 15X is on there. We've kind of talked about this already, giving new life to analog scanners. And this is the perfect, I know that I've spoken to several of you over the phone when you called up over the holiday season, to Scanner Master, and you said, you guys talk about the railroads so much, kind of got me interested in listening to the railroads. Now I'm listening to the railroads. Or when we've done, Rich, you've done your talks about commercial aviation civilian aviation and military air. People have dived into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And the 15 is ideal for that, for a desktop scanner. It's analog, it's low priced, and it works really well. You can tell I've got a bunch of them back there, and they work really well for those analog, and it's mostly transportation. That's why we call it the desktop transportation scanner or the mobile transportation scanner, because it works so well on railroads, aircraft, maritime channels. And it's got plenty of channel capacity, so you can put in every channel in the radio and still have plenty of room left over. The search part of it works really well, and it does a great job on that. So we've got the 125, we call that the portable transportation scanner. The 15 is the desktop transportation scanner.
Yeah, I mean, these are all great radios. I mean, we did a lot of Uniden side of things, because Rich and I are very familiar with Uniden side of things. But all the things that we mentioned, you can do with a Whistler radio or even your Radio Shack radios if you've got a few of those. I mean, these are all things. I mean, the verbiage is a little different. On the database scanners on the Uniden side, it's called favorites list. On the Whistler side or Radio Shack side, it's called like a scan list. It's all the same ball of wax. I mean, basically, you're creating custom lists, whether it be called a favorites list or a scan list. You're doing the same thing. And the same thing with the dynamic allocated memory system on the Uniden radio. It's systems and groups where you can have 99 systems. On the Whistler side, there's scan list as well. You can have up to 20 scan lists on the radio. The other thing is you could get into V folders, where you could
That is a great feature.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you've got an older Whistler GRE or Radio Shack scanner like the 1065, 1040s, PSR 600s, they have something called V scanners, which are basically copies of the entire memory. The scanner itself has up to 1,800 channels. You can break that down in 20 scan lists and do searches and all the rest of that crazy stuff. But then what you can do is you can save that to a V scanner, and then you can save multiple V scanners. So when I was doing a lot of traveling, I had a PSR 600 several years back in the car, and I would have a V scanner set up for Illinois, one for Missouri, one for Wisconsin, so I can just reload it. It only takes about 30 or 40 seconds for the scanner to reload that V scanner. So if you are a GRE Radio Shack Whistler fan, don't despair. It's there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great things there. So we've looked at that. So let's continue on with the slideshow here. So we dive a little bit more into why the scanner cloning. Major Fire uses two Firegrounds in the same that are in the same favorites list. So let's say they're using two Firegrounds. You can clone, if you have the favorites list or scan list cloned, or you have the programming cloned in between your 996s or 15s or whatever it may be, you could lock in on one radio, one channel, and the other radio on the other, and then you don't miss a beat. Small towns, same thing. We just mentioned this. Lock down radio A on the police channel, lock radio B on the fire channel. change the programming combos on each scanner, which we mentioned in the previous slide. So if you find that you're missing calls because radio A, for whatever reason, is busy like crazy, move it over to radio B and see if you're able to pick up more of the radio transmissions. I mean, the great thing about programming is not only you can change the programming configurations when you have multiple radios, you can do multiple setups, move things over to one radio to the other and see how it works.
Yeah. And the varieties of ways to do this is limited only by your imagination. Like you said before, think outside the box. You can do all kinds of different things, and you can gear it to your specific location and your specific way of doing things. You want to be able to listen to Firegrounds or police tactical channels or snowplows, whatever it is your interest is, wherever your interest lies, you can tailor this to do the way you want it to be done.
And the one thing that I forgot when I was working on my portion of the slideshow, it put this verbiage on the screen. There's no wrong way of doing this. Like Rich said right there, this is your configuration. You find what works best for you. And it may take a couple of tries. You may find, you may use the radio setup for a week and say, I'm not too crazy about this.
Yeah.
So let me go back into the software, do some tweaks. Then try to reprogram, send the programming to the radio and then see how the configuration works then. There's no wrong way. All we're doing in this slideshow is opening your eyes to other options.
Yep. Absolutely. And the right way is whatever way works for you. The wrong way is, there is no wrong way. So it's, if it works for you, it's the right way. And what works for you doesn't work for me sometimes. And these are suggestions, and you take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and mix it all together, and you get a great recipe.
That's for sure. And how many of you run into this? So you've got the radios together, and you're like, who said what? And you're like, I heard that, but, which radio did it come off of? And a lot of times, you may not be looking at the radio. So one of the ways that I tend to do it in my shack is I love these external speakers. Mm-hmm. So I've collected several of them over the years. I think I have a half dozen of them, believe it or not. I have a half dozen of them in here, and basically all my mobile radios have a speaker connected to it, and I have them placed, in certain spots. So I know, my ear knows if I'm hearing something on this side, it's this radio, and if I know I'm hearing something on this ear, I know it's coming from that radio. So that's one of the tricks when you have multiple radios, along with, we talked about this, the LED alert lights. Mm-hmm. We also talked about the other bullet point, Rich. Volume control. Higher on one, lower on the other.
Dispatchers would know that as select and unselect volumes. That's why there's separate volume control, so you can tweak them.
Is there any other recommendations, Rich, that you would, since you have multiple radios, that you would recommend for people to try with their shack setup at this point?
No, pretty much spatial distribution with the speakers is a great way of doing it, as long as your hearing is good enough where you can differentiate between this side and this side. Some people, especially police officers, tend to have hearing loss on the left ear. And that's driving down the street with the window open. You get the wind rushing by. And I've got that. And every police officer I've met who have talked about with that, they all have hearing loss on this side because of driving down the street with the window open. So you get that. So the radios over here tend to have to be a little bit higher volume, so that when you turn this way, now all of a sudden you can't hear that radio because it's on the bad ear. So if you've got some sort of disambiguation between your ears, with hearing, then that may affect what you're doing. But normally, if your hearing is pretty much the same on both ears, tweaking the volumes and that lights are very important. But remember, those lights aren't latched, so they'll stay on for a period of time.
And of course, the other thing that contributed, which is not on the list, is the alpha tag displays. It played a huge role on. I remember way back when I started in this hobby, we did have display, but it was only frequency. So you would have to remember that 482.4875 was so and so town.
Yeah.
And you knew the frequencies right off the top of your head because when I started in the hobby, I was manually programming the scanners, and two, I was looking at the screen and I could see, I could see the frequency. I knew who it was.
You knew all half dozen frequencies used in your county.
And the other thing, and still to this day, when we were living in Massachusetts, I used to, I'd be sitting somewhere, and my wife's in the room, and I would not be looking at the scanner, and I could tell by mic key up. Mm-hmm. Just by mic key up, no talking, I could tell you who that was just because of the sound of the system. With especially a lot of these conventional non-trunking systems, you could tell, that Mayberry PD or such and such fire department just by the sound of the repeater.
Yeah, and we had that too. There's a thing called tone remotes, which has a little tone that goes out over the phone line to key up a remote transmitter. And sometimes you can hear a bit of that tone as they're keying up. So I could always tell when my local fire department was using their remote transmitter because they had a huge coverage area. And so they had a remote transmitter that was 5 or 8 miles west of us. So when they had a call out there, they'd use the west transmitter, which was a remote, and you could hear a little chirp at the beginning. So I knew that was the Mundelein transmitter, and when you didn't hear that chirp, you knew it was the Vernon transmitter.
So many cool things. I mean, I hope with tonight's topic that we kind of opened your minds to various things that you can do with your radios. I mean, that's the whole thing of it. I mean, a lot of us have more than, we have maybe 1, 2, or 3 or 4 radios, and, just getting the most bang out of your buck. And, I mean, in your shack, you may have a digital radio and an analog radio, and just figuring out how to use that, or you have a couple of digital radios, separating out the programming.
Yep.
So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into your questions in a moment. We see that there's tons of questions. I saw somebody ask about the clip for my from my SDS, which I'll definitely get to. Just want to remind you of our friends over at the Scanner School. They're doing a 3-part series this month about getting into the hobby 2021. It's the Scanner School Crash Course. So in this episode, join basically Phil in this 3-part series about scanning in 2021. Last week was the basics of scanning. This week, which you can download today, I actually have to update the slide. I didn't update this portion of the slide, but so as of yesterday, you can download the Trunking podcast, where he talks about trunking, and then on the 3rd part of the series, which will be next week, which will be the 26th, he will be talking about hardware. And all these podcasts can be found at the Scanner School, or you can go to your favorite place for podcasts and search out the Scanner School, and definitely take a listen to part 1 and part 2, which are now available. Part 3 will be available next week. And we've got something else available as well from the Scanner School. He's going to do a webinar. So once this is all done, Tuesday, January the 26th, at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, he's going to go live and do a webinar. Everything that you need to know about scanners in 2021 for newbies and advanced users. You can freshen up on some of the things regarding scanners if you've been away from the hobby a bit. and you can sign up for the webinar. Definitely do that after the broadcast. Visit thescannerschool.com/2021, and then you can sign up for his webinar. And that's a great thing to be able to check out. If some of you are just getting into the hobby and you've been away from it, or you're new to the hobby and you found the scanner guys, definitely check out our friends over at the Scanner School. So that's definitely a key thing to do there. We can't say... Phil is great. He'll lead your way, through the various things and so on. We also have our scanner tip of the week, which, Rich, you were telling me a little bit about this. You were getting a lot of people asking about baud rates.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had 3 calls this week about this specific thing, so I figured it's a good time for the scanner tip of the week. If you're buying the relatively new BCS GPS kit, which is the universal, I call it the universal GPS kit because it works on all unit and zip code aware scanners, from the 996s to the 325s, 396s, Home Patrols, all the zip code scanners. It works with them. And it comes with adapter cables to work with each of those scanners. The difference is the old GPS, well, the one with the round puck, used 4800 baud as the communication rate between the GPS and the radio. This one uses 9600. So I've had at least 3 people call this week, say they plug this thing in, everything seems to plug in correctly, but no GPS. So you go into a couple of these people were Home Patrols, and a couple of people, and one person was a 536. So I showed them how to go into setting the baud rate and set it to 9600. And as soon as they did, bingo, it worked. So this unit, if you've got this square GPS with the phone wire and the adapter box and all the rest of the stuff, it's going to be set to 9600. If you've got the older round puck, that's set to 4800. All of the unit and scanners can be set to different scan speed or different communication speeds for the GPS. Make sure you're set to the proper one. And if you've got this one, set it to 9600, and you should be good.
That's for sure. It's a great scanner of the week tip, so definitely keep that in mind. And we'll certainly have some more of these scanner tips of the week as well during upcoming shows, so definitely be on the lookout for that as well. We want to just give you a quick reminder. If you've got additional questions, you can certainly check out Scanner Master. You can give them a call at their toll-free number at 1-800-722-6637. You can email them support at scannermaster.com. And they're open phone line-wise Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can always shop ScannerMaster 24/7 at scannermaster.com. Next week's show, we are going to take the second place voted in item, and we're going to talk about the Unit and Bearcat SDSs, the frequently asked questions about those particular radios, and we're going to look back at them. They've been around for a couple of years now, and we're going to look back at them and discuss the things that they brought to the table. As most of you say, simulcast. And we'll definitely talk about that a little bit more in detail. So that'll be next Wednesday, January the 27th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on our YouTube channel. So make sure you hit the subscribe button right now if you're watching this. We're also going to have a Train Aficionado live show coming up. Haven't thought of the topic yet, but hopefully we'll have a really good topic. We'll announce that next week. And that's the first Monday of each month. That's February the 1st, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Go over to the Train Aficionado YouTube channel. Hit subscribe there. Hit the bell for notifications as well. And as I mentioned, follow, like, and subscribe to social media. Train Aficionado also has that as well on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. And then make sure you check out the blog. I do have a couple of blog entries that I'm going to be posting, some brand new ones. So definitely check the blog, which is trainaficionado.com. And don't forget, follow, like, and subscribe to all the social media for Scanner Master as well, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. And don't forget, the scanner guys, show us some love. Follow, like, and subscribe to our social media as well. So we've got a lot of questions in there. We've got our regular check-ins. As always, thank you so much for joining us each and every week. Let's dive into those questions, Rich. Where do you want to start?
All right. So Jonathan and I were perfecting the show right up to lunchtime today, which we do that every day. So we are always online with each other, making sure the slideshow is up to date and proofread. So we do that as a matter of course. So hello, everybody. Art got his SDS 200 today. He thanks us for that. So, Art, you're going to have a lot of fun with that. And hopefully you'll learn something. And we will talk more about the SDS next week. So be sure to be with us then. Kevin is unfortunately, he works during our working hours. So he's trying to find a way to get through to somebody on the phone. Kevin, our phones are open from 10 till 4 Eastern time. So I'm not sure what time zone you're in, but if there's a way to call us on your lunch break or something like that, please do call us. Unfortunately, there's no way for us to call outside those hours. Alternately, send your emails to us at support@scannermaster.com, and we'll be glad to answer your questions there. And we will engage in the back and forth if our answer leads to more questions and such. So we're good about following up on that. So.
And the other thing, Kevin, do all your questions through email, and if you prefer talking to someone over the phone, placing the order, it's painless and it's quick and easy. Give us a call during your lunch break. Once we've exhausted all your questions and you're ready to order, give a call. During your lunch break, and then it's like bang, bang, bang. You know what you want. You've asked all your questions. It's we can place that order for you and go right from there.
And if you can't do that, I mean, you can order on the phone or on the internet. Our site is secure. Our secure is a site. Our site is secure, so you can order online and feel free. We have that part of it is pretty good, and our online you're going to get the same price whether you're online or not. And if there's a mistake or you get charged shipping for something you shouldn't got charged for, something like that, you can always send us an email after the fact and we'll get a refund back to you. We take care of our customers, even if we can't talk to you on the phone. So there's another Kevin who lives in Bucks County, and apparently their police department just went encrypted there on their new trunking system. While we were doing, I did a little research. They're on a phase 2 system. So if you're in Bucks County, which is suburban Philadelphia, you're going to need a phase 2 scanner for the fire operations on the new system. And if you're listening to the police channels, unfortunately, you're out of luck. So,
and just
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, and another question we get all the time is, how do I listen to an encrypted system? There's a quick two-word answer to that is you don't.
And the other thing that we mentioned multiple times on other shows with these encrypted systems, Rich hit the nail on the head. The fire department is not encrypted. They're going to roll on a lot of scenes at police departments. So you're still going to gain the story. Maybe at this point you are a police buff and you like listening to it. Give the fire department a try. You're going to hear interesting things on their end, and you're still going to know the happenings of whether it be good or bad in your community, whether there's an accident scene or a medical that's domestic type. You're going to know the things that a lot of times when the police department's rolling on scene, the fire department's rolling on scene for various things. So you're still going to get the story of what's going on in your community.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's that thinking outside the box thing. You can't hear the police, but you can hear the interop channels, you can hear the fire channels, the highway department, that kind of stuff. When there's something big going on, it's not going to be just the police there, so you'll be able to hear what's going on. Also, check out your ops channels, TAC channels, and such. In my community, the police are encrypted for their dispatch, but their tactical channels are open. So when they got something big going on, they're chatting about it on the TAC channel, and I can listen to that all day long. and I do. So, um, and let's see here. A bunch of our regulars are checking in. So, hello to our friends in Missouri and Montana, Buffalo, and Ohio. Some more guys in PA. Nebraska. This is a new guy. I don't think we've talked to him before. Braden. So, hello, Braden.
Hello,
Thanks for
Braden.
showing up. Evan asks how I'm liking the new camera in Tucson, or as we call it here in Phoenix, Tucson. I love it, except that it's down right now. Virtual Railfan, I'm sure, is getting swamped these days. So it seems to be the whole Virtual Railfan system is down this evening. It was working fine right at the start of the show, but I had two cameras going, and they both went out. So I'm sure they're working on that. If you're not familiar with the Virtual Railfan, get familiar with them. They are great.
Yeah, I mean, I would highly recommend Virtual Railfan. I mean, their cameras are awesome. If you love watching trains and you're not able to be trackside all the time, both Rich and I work from home. So we have the ability to have the cameras up. So, when we hear the train horn or we hear the rumblings of a train coming to approach the camera, we can glance up for a second and see what's coming through and then continue working. I mean, especially in this time, where we're COVID, working from home type of thing, and you're a rail fan. And this gives you the ability to see how much action there is. So if you could see, boy, I think I'm going to go out to this area. They got a lot of trains. So virtual, go ahead.
Yeah, I go rail fanning in Flagstaff about once a month. And my wife will have the camera on when she's at home because she doesn't like going rail fanning. So she'll stay at home, but she'll turn on the camera where I'm at if I happen to be at one of the camera locations like Flagstaff, and she'll look at me and then she'll text me, "Hey, I see you." So I got to wave at her, and and she makes sure that I'm actually rail fanning and not out doing something else. So let's see here. So Tony is back. So welcome. He's been out for a while now. He's been missing for a while, but he's back. So thank you, Antonio. And you talked about your SDS 100 latch.
Yes. So the new latch is on, and it is heavy duty. I'm very pleased with it. I mean, works great. Slides in. Perfect, nice, tight thing. Was easy to put in. Just be very careful. You don't want to mess up anything when you pull the radio apart. I'm going to take the battery out. So there is 4 batteries, and one at each corner. And then you have, not 4 batteries, 4 screws. There is 1 battery, 4 screws here, and then 2 screws up here. Now, be very careful with the screws. They're small. So you want to make sure that you're doing this on a table, and you want to be careful not to lose the screws. So you basically unscrew these screws and then unscrew this. This will lift up. There's a pin on this hinge. When you replace this, you're going to slide that pin out, hold on to that, put the new hinge on, the new clamp latch, or whatever we want it, latch. Put that pin in. Secure your screws back in, and you're done. I'm just amazed, making parts with a 3D printer. Who would have thought?
Yeah, I mean, nobody would have thought about that, 5 years ago or 6 years ago or so. But now it's become a cottage industry, and that is it's a little niche that somebody has filled, and it works. And you're a happy customer. I'm going to be ordering one. Mine's not broken, but I'm pretty sure I will break it at some point, and so I'm going to have one of those. And even though, I could probably get it from Uniden, but it might take months. I might have to send the radio back. On something like this, it's really easy. So,
and you can tell that it's the materials that they're using for this is a lot. I don't know what happened to the other part. Oh, here it is. This is my broken latch here. And I'll show you this. Let me just go. So you can see here, blends right in with the radio. It's at the bottom.
Yep.
It's a little bit longer than the regular latch, but it's perfect. The great thing about John's website, you can put a note in there. If you're using the smaller battery pack, you can request the shorter latch. So it won't go out as far. I'm using the larger battery pack, so I have no issue with that.
Yeah.
And look at that. I mean, it looks like it belongs to the radio. I mean, it's it's an awesome thing. So definitely, you may want to order those. John, was his last name, Rich?
Weinke.
From Radio Reference. If you search it out on the forums, you'll be able to find it. And it was $10, and he's not, as of right now, he's not charging for shipping. You may want to definitely order one of those at some point, just because it's bound to happen. The other thing, too, is I would also recommend a carrying case. Added protection.
Yeah. And that way, if you drop it, you're a lot less likely to break the clip in the first place. So,
yeah.
But if you take the battery on and off often, you might want to consider getting one of those clips preemptively and hang on to it until, in case you do break it, and then you don't have to sit around waiting for it. I've seen other guys have to put, rubber bands around there or, some other way to keep the battery door latched while they're waiting for the new clip to show up. So, all right, so we're going to be talking about SDSs like we've talked about here, and we will talk about the battery clip next week when we do the SDS FAQ.
Yeah, and Jason was the gentleman that mentioned he has 5 radios and he uses them frequently. Well, hopefully, Jason, we've got you thinking outside the box, and hopefully that was a huge help.
Yep. Braden, who mentioned earlier, still programs all his scanners by hand. That's not a bad thing. I do a lot of hand programming just so that I can remember to do it, because if you know how to program it by hand, you'll have no problem programming it by computer because you already understand the terminology. And it's a great way to learn the ins and outs of the radios, because you might be out in the field and have to make a change in the field. And if you know how to do it from the keyboard of the radio, you're all set. You're not stuck waiting on a computer. So.
Yeah, there's a gentleman that I speak to. I haven't heard from him in a bit. He did call me when I was down here in the Carolinas, and he programs all of his radios manually. And he's got radios that are PC programmable. He just prefers it. Yeah,
and some people do, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just easier to make wholesale changes by computer than it is to do it in person or on the keyboard. But yeah, you can certainly do it. There's nothing wrong with it, and if it makes you happy, go for it, man. Mm-hmm. All righty. So Steve's got his radio set just to where he likes them. He may not remember how to hand program them, but you know what? Like I said just a minute ago, if you know how to hand program the scanner, you can do it out in the field when you're not in front of a computer. So if you're out rail fanning and you realize that you get something messed up, if you know how to at least change a frequency or something like that in the field, you can do it right there from the keyboard and get your scanner going right away.
And the other thing, too, when you're hand programming, you even have a bigger understanding of how a trunk system operates. Because, you're literally programming all aspects of the trunk system, from the site right down to the talk groups.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a problem, a recurring problem with a lot of our callers is they said, I spent an hour programming in this trunking system, but it doesn't work. It says nothing to scan. I said, well, what sites did you put in? Sites? Yeah. Where the frequencies go. I didn't do it. I just put the talk group numbers in there. Well, they didn't put the sites in there. And it's because they don't have that idea of how that trunking system works. And if you know how to do it manually, you would have known that. So make sure you really understand it. And if you can do it manually with the keyboard or the radio, you'll understand doing it with the computer that much better.
That's for sure.
We were talking earlier about how it was in the old days, and this is a kind of a recurring thing. I'm an old guy, so I remember how we did things in the old ways. So back in the 70s and 80s, you had frequency books, police call, the scanner master guides, etc., and some other stuff. And on the next comment is newsletters. the 70s, 80s, and 90s were huge for newsletters, printed newsletters. I wrote some. And some of our other guys from Carmel, we had one of the most popular printed newsletters out there. We distributed hundreds of copies every issue. And there were others. There was the All Ohio Scanner Club, of course, the RCMA, and a bunch of others that had monthly or bi-monthly newsletters. And now everything is electronic. So we have the e-newsletter.
Sign up for our e-newsletter. Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect plug. Cross plug is sign up for our newsletter. Do that after the broadcast. thescannerguys.weebly.com. If you can't remember the Weebly, put it in Google. Go to our website. Right in the top bar are menu options. If you're on a desktop computer, hit the newsletter, fill in the couple of pieces of information, and you'll be subscribed to our newsletter. So newsletters, printed ones have kind of went away, but digital ones are here to stay.
Yeah. I'm working on my segues. So there we go. All righty. So there was a little clarification in our Bucks County stuff. Looks like the police are encrypted for now, but they might go unencrypted until all the fire and EMS are upgraded so that they can receive the police zones, not transmit on it. That's actually pretty common on a lot of these digital trunking systems where the police are encrypted, but the fire is not. They will give the fire departments the ability to listen to the police channels, at least the dispatch channels, even though they're encrypted. So, they may update the fire radios for encryption, not to encrypt the fire channels, but to allow them to listen to the police channels. And Joe says that they're lucky they're getting that because a lot of agencies aren't even allowing the fire departments to listen to the police channels, much less the public. So Dave's got several scanners, and he's got his layouts there. So that's not a bad way of doing it. It continues on. So Chris listens to stores on his scanner. A lot of stores and businesses still use their old analog channels, so you can still use your old scanner to listen to that. So you can have a multiple fire configurations and a police configuration and at scene stuff and all kinds of different layouts we were talking about before. And yes, I did cite a benefit for quick keys. Dale's got his old 785s and 796s. His Bank 10 is labeled for stuff, and that's a good way of doing it. It's just stuff. It's a safe spot to program in whatever floats your boat at that particular time. You can use your older scanner for the NOAA weather, like Ray is saying. Mm-hmm. And some of those radios even have weather alert. So if your scanner has weather alert, your old scanner has weather alert, you can use that as a weather alert receiver. Duranimal uses loves quick keys, so that's cool. So yeah, we'll have to do a show all about quick keys. Jim can't live without them. Tony is on our side. He's not a quick key person, but Jason's quick keys and Chevy. So hey, that's cool. We're equal opportunity people here. We like Ford drivers and Chevy drivers, and Mac and PC people. Mm-hmm. So Democrats and Republicans, mm-hmm. and we even like independents. All righty, learn what you listen to before disaster hits. Great advice.
Yes.
Fantastic. You won't have time to figure out that stuff. So have that stuff in the radio now so that when you need it later, it's there.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier looking up the information on your computer versus your smartphone. It's going to be a little bit smaller. Perfect suggestion right there.
Absolutely. So Chris is asking us why we love the SDSs so much, but we don't talk about the TRXs very often. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Oh, you gave me that. Well, there's a couple of things. For me, mobily, GPS scanning is huge. TRXs don't offer that. Although the TRX-2 has a remote head, which is nice. But if it had GPS scanning, then I would probably leap over there. The SDSs operate better on simulcast systems, so that's that. The TRXs are really pretty decent. They work a little bit differently with the zip code based programming versus the Uniden radios. When you put in a zip code and a radius and so on, it's going to work a little bit different than the TRX. The TRX pulls in a whole entire region, if I remember correctly, right, Rich?
Yeah, when you put in a zip code on TRX, it figures out what county it's in and then programs everything for that county.
So
and
it's
you select
not
your service types.
It's not a more precise thing.
No, it's not a radius like the Uniden works. So, and some people like that. And I've used GRE, Radio Shack, and Whistler scanners. I think the audio is better as a rule with the Whistler GRE type scanners. And I do like that remote head. I wish that Unidens had that as well. But all in all, I'm much more used to the way Uniden works, and I know where the buttons are and how to make it do what it does just because I've got more experience with them. There's nothing wrong with the TRXs. It's just that I'm much more used to the Uniden way of doing things.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, it's the same Pepsi versus Coke argument, Chevy versus Ford argument. Some people prefer Whistler over Uniden. I mean, for the most part, Rich and I are heavily Uniden. I mean, I've used the Whistler GRE units, and there's things that I like about it. I mean, if you compare a 996 P2 versus what is it, the WS
65
1065 is easier to field program. It's a menu drilling down. You're filling in the blanks. With the Uniden radio, you're peeling back an onion. It's layered. It's a layered menu. So you're peeling back that onion. So, there's benefits, pluses and minuses on both of those. We probably could do a show on Uniden versus Whistler.
Yeah, we probably could. That wouldn't be a bad show. But like I say, they both do pretty much the same thing in different ways. It's like driving a Ford versus Chevy. The headlight switch goes like this on a Ford and it goes like this on a Chevy or something like that. It's just it does pretty much the same thing for the most part. It just takes a different path. So we should do another show on the biggest perk of trunking over a couple of conventional channels. That we can spend an entire show talking about the advantages and disadvantages of each. That's for sure. And again, you can do the same thing with the multiple scanners. If you have a trunking scanner and a non-trunking scanner, conventional scanner, you can set it up that way as well for your multiple scanner setup. Let's see here. Bunch of suggestions on how to do multiple scanners. Joe's got a bunch of different scanners, so he's got one radio for county fire, one for EMS, one for police, and one for other stuff. So yeah, you can do a whole lot of different things.
Yeah,
with multiple scanners.
Like we said, there's no wrong or right way of doing it. It's the way that works best for you.
Yep.
Let's see.
Let's see. A couple of these comments were specifically geared towards what we were talking about at the time, and we've talked about that already. So, with all those radios behind me, how do I know how many antennas do I have in my roof?
Joe answered the question. None. Yeah. There's no antennas on his roof, and then we could actually let the comments answer the questions. So Joe came back. All the few antennas are in the attic. Yeah. And why HOA? I mean, literally, they answered the question. So, how many? The only thing we don't have from the comments is how many antennas are up there in the attic.
Oh, we do.
Oh, somebody did answer.
Yeah, the next comment.
Oh, it's you. Yes.
Yeah, I have 21 antennas in my attic. And if you've seen any of my shack photos or videos, which, by the way, I'm going to have a new one coming out sometime next month, I think. I have a patch panel on the wall. It's behind a cabinet, so you can't see it right now. and it's basically double female antenna connectors, and they have all the coaxes coming down from the attic onto that panel, and then I have jumpers going from the patch panel up to the multi-couplers or to the radios themselves. And it actually works really well, and it makes it real easy for me to change antennas around. So if I want to change that the multi-coupler for the top batch of radios from the ST2 to the ST3 or to the Discone, I just change that patch panel cable from this one to this one. Remember the old pictures of the operators patching phone calls through? I can do the same thing with my antennas. So in my next house, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have all N connectors on the patch panel and use all LMR 400s to all the antennas. So this was kind of set up with what I had at the time. So that's why I've got some F connectors, I've got some BNCs, I've got some PL259s, I got some N connectors. My next house is going to be all N, all LMR 400, going to all the antennas, and it's going to be a little more set up like that. So, all right. So zip code scanning was a game changer. Yes, it were. When the Home Patrol came out, I was on the beta team for the Home Patrol. I think you were too, Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated it. I despised it. I said, this is not the radio for me. But it wasn't designed for me. It was designed for everybody else that weren't scanner gods like us, you know.
Yeah, and I was working at Scanner Master, and out of the group of the guys that were a part of the beta group, you know, they were all saying, "What the hell is this?" And then I was thinking that I know what customer base this is for. This is for someone that's getting into the hobby or doesn't want to get so technically into the programming aspect of it. And I said, I can wrap my head around this. This is something, you know, I knew the niche base, and you guys, you know, were at, you know, I'm also at that tier, but I'm exposed to that level of people calling in, and it's like, this is going to be perfect. This is going to be the scanner that's going to help people to get into the hobby. It's kind of like, you know, getting them hooked, you know, and then they're like, ooh, and you get involved with the programming. And then you say, ooh, I want to do more. And then you look at a 996 and say, ooh, God, I could have some fun with this. And then you expand from the Home Patrol to the 996, and then you dive your toe into something a little bit more. And it's certainly...
It's like crack. It's like marijuana. You know, it's an entry drug into the scanners. You know, and then it gets you hooked, and then now you end up with something like this. So it was a huge game changer. And once I had that epiphany, you know, you were the one who got it because you talked to the customers. I wasn't doing calls, you know, phone call support at the time. You know, I was just an advanced scanner user, and I really didn't understand the concept. And then, you know, eventually I was like, oh, wait a minute, now that makes sense. And I think once the radio reference database got set up more towards the Home Patrol, it made it that much better.
So I see Michael's question here, and I have a couple of answers. Yes, so you can get those at Home Depot or Lowe's, or if you're really on a budget, go to your local Dollar Tree. If you have a Dollar Tree or a Family Dollar or one of those dollar stores, and you go into the hardware section of the store, typically it's an aisle, they always sell those little rubber feet. And you can get it for cheap. You just put a couple of those. The other thing, too, if you're a Uniden person, I can't find it, but the knobs that you get and you just put aside, you don't use them, you're going to end up using those. In the package from Uniden, they have the rubber feet. They have 4 rubber feet in there. So if you still have that, you can use those little rubber feet on the base of the Spectrum Force desk mount. Yeah,
so the answer to the question is no, it doesn't. But yeah, get these. They're dirt cheap. Give it Dollar Store, Home Depot. I buy these by the case, and I use them. I actually put them on the bottom of every scanner that's even in the rack, because I'll do something like this every once in a while, where I'll put the scanner on top of something, and I put those little rubber feet on it, keeps it from sliding around. and I have rubber feet on the bottom of my rack here. It just, yeah, I use them all over the place. I got it. I even have them on the bottom of my computer.
Yeah, so
yeah,
definitely. It
yeah,
doesn't come with it, but yes, you can pick that up. And it's certainly a good thing to go with.
absolutely. And they come in black, they come in gray, they come in clear.
They come in rubber, they come in felt.
Yeah. Yeah, they come with great big ones like this, which are what, half-inch tall, or these, which are like an eighth of an inch tall. So yeah, they're bunches of different ones, and I'm always buying those at Hamfests and Home Depot every time I go through there.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
that's I've used those at the Dollar Tree. I've used that for
yeah,
my those of you that are familiar with the slideshow that I showed, my mobile shack. So on the front and back of the box is a rubber pad, not a rubber pad, but a felt pad. So when I pull this out, it doesn't scratch, and it also gives me a nice
yeah,
snug fit.
yeah, absolutely. And I use those. I use them for my kitchen cabinets. So that when you bang the door closed, it doesn't bang. It just kind of puts on there, and it also keeps the door from getting stuck. So Mike writes, and Mike brings up a real good point here. All of his portable radios are set up exactly the same. His mobile's a little bit different, but tries to keep it consistent. And this is the other part: is he's using RIDs, which are radio IDs, which are a fascinating part of the hobby if you are listening to a trunking system. So most radios scanners these days that monitor trunking systems, digital trunking systems, will allow you to display and program radio IDs into the scanner. So you can display the radio IDs, and it'll say radio ID 1234556, and then you can program that radio ID if you figure out who that user is or what that is. So if the guy that works, car 54, and he's always got radio number, 12354, then you program 12354 in your radio, and every time it shows up with 12354, it'll say car 54, and so you'll be able to know that. And then if you see that radio 12337 always comes up as radio is car 37, you're starting to see a pattern there. The last two digits match the car number. That's pretty common. Not always, but it's pretty common. And if you start recognizing these radio IDs and you start keeping track of those, you can identify new talk groups on your system, because if you see the same group of radio IDs popping up all the time and you have an idea of what that department is that uses those radio IDs, you'll be able to figure out, okay, that's probably some sort of attack channel for Mayberry, because all the cars that affiliate or use that channel are Mayberry cars. So, and that's where radio IDs come in very handy, especially if you're using computer logging programs like Pro96Com or ProScanner ARC or something like that. All right, so Joe uses high-capacity cards. Sometimes he's got to remove recordings off the cards to make rooms. The only reason why I normally suggest people not to use the higher capacity cards is, unless you're doing recording, is that the higher capacity cards do take a couple seconds longer to boot up the radio, because the radio does an integrity check of the card, as it's starting up. So it does take a second or two longer if you're using a high capacity card. So 8 gigs, I think, is ideal for most of the time. And if you're doing recording, then 16 gigs would be fine. But, if you're using a smaller capacity card and you're doing recording, you can offload your recordings if you really want to save them. Storing these large statewide systems, does it affect scanning speed? Yeah.
Yeah, that's I dive into this a lot. So, for example, you've got this set up as your base station. What you want to do, especially on a Uniden radio, and this is where Uniden and Whistler separate themselves somewhat. On the Uniden side of things, you want to program in the sites that you're closest to, and forget about the rest of the sites for the state, unless you're using this radio mobily.
Right.
If you're using this at your home, put in the sites that are closest to you, maybe, whatever sites you're within range of. I'll leave it at that. So you'll eliminate the vast majority. The reason why is what'll happen is when your scanner stops on this statewide system, it's going to check every one of those sites for a control channel, which then slows down your scanning speed.
Yes.
So when you do the sites that you're able to get reception, it's going to go bang, bang, bang. And then it's going to scan right through it. When you're doing this mobily, you have a GPS hooked up. Each one of those sites is going to have a latitude, longitude that's going to turn off by itself. Over on the Whistler side, you've got a 1065 or a 1040. What the radio has is you can program in a whole bunch of sites. It's got a threshold. So it'll grab onto the first site that's within, you can change the threshold, but the default setting is 75. Believe it or not, Uniden guy knows about Whistler. So, that's why we're the scanner experts, because we know both brands. Although you can see behind Rich all those Unidens, and you can, if you saw in front of me, all the Unidens in front of me. So
I got 4 GREs under the bottom here.
Yeah. So basically how it works is the radio's got a threshold of 75%. So what happens is your scanner you power it up. It'll go to that trunk system, and then it'll gravitate towards a control channel that's at 75% or better. Once that control channel dips down below the 75%, it's going to start looking for other sites because it's not reaching the minimum threshold. So that's how it will work with that. So the great thing about the Whistler is as you travel, it's going to keep changing the trunk sites. And that doesn't affect the scanning speed because it's going to grab onto that threshold control channel until it gets below. On the Uniden side, when you program it, you're programming on all those sites. And in turn, the Uniden radio is going to check, because each one of those are an individual thing. It's going to check A, B, C, D, E, F, G, blah, 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 blah. And then it's going to scan. And then it's going to go back, blah, 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 all the way through again. So when you're programming in the systems that have reception, it's going to go 1, 2, 3, scan. 1, 2, 3, scan. So it's going to be fast. So that's the thing to keep in mind. If you're using a Uniden radio as a base radio, eliminate the systems that you can't pick up.
Yeah, the sites and stuff. And if you're using it mobily with a GPS, make sure that you have the sites programmed with location control and proper GPS locations and ranges. People forget about the ranges. The ranges are very important. When you put in a GPS location, the range is how big a circle is drawn around that range, and that tells you the GPS when to turn the radio on that system or that site on and off. So I had the Starcom system in Illinois set up that way, and I'm driving across the state, and as I drive across the state, it's turning on and off the individual sites so that the radio is not otherwise engaged in scanning sites that I have no hope of hearing. There are many methods you can use to number your systems. If you understand the license plate numbering system of your state, some states use a county-based system for license plate numbers. You can use that. Some states, like Illinois, have each county numbered alphabetically. So Adams County is number 1 and Woodford County is number 102. You can use that if you know that. Or you can do it whatever way works for you is the way that works for you. We were talking earlier about the alert lights. Apparently GRE has got the patent on the latching alert light, carrier light. So Uniden can't use that in the radios because GRE owns the patent on that, and there's some discussion about how that is comes around. And there's they own the patent, so Uniden, we either have to pay them a bunch of money or wait for that patent to expire. And that was the same reason why close call on the Uniden scanners until the P2 came out. Close call, you had to hit a button in order to see what the frequency was on a close call hit on a Uniden scanner. Now, apparently, whoever had that patent either let it lapse or Uniden paid for the license to use it. Nowadays on a 996P2 that I've got out in my van, when close call hits, it shows the frequency right away. But my 996XT, I got to press a button. And man, I wish they would update the firmware to do that. Yeah, I got to replace my 996XTs with a P2.
Yeah, and that would be probably a very easy firmware update, I would imagine.
Yeah, I would think so. So, and let's see here. Dan says that the second best scanner is the BCT15X, and the best scanner is up to the individual users. So Dan apparently is a big fan of the BCT15X, am I.
Me too.
Yep, and as are you. Get the right pronouns in there. So let's see, some more discussion about that back and forth. You only have half a dozen speakers? Oh, come on, Jonathan, you got to have more speakers.
No, I have a couple more. I don't have a ton of radios I'm using all the time. Yeah. But yeah, I do have the number of allotted speakers I need here. I have a tote that's in the closet that's got a wide variety of things, and I know there's a few more speakers in there as well.
All right, so we don't need to start up that GoFundMe account for speakers for Jonathan.
No, I've got more than enough speakers. I don't need any more speakers.
I collected over the years a ton of Motorola and GE external speakers for mobile radios. We would get rid of the radios and send those to the landfill or to get recycled, but I would keep the speakers because they were useful. And then, so over the years, I gathered several dozen of these. And when I was fixing to move from Illinois to Arizona, I had to get rid of a bunch of them. And I gave them away at one of our Scanner Club meetings, and they all went because they are good speakers. And if you rewire them to plug into the back of a scanner, they work great. So if you get a chance to get a bunch of Motorola or GE mobile radio speakers, they work great. And Lincoln's got a old California Highway Patrol external speaker. It's got to be 30 years old. It probably still works like a champ.
Yeah, I mean that's a great thing when you find speakers that work. It's you know, it's a match made in heaven.
I had a bunch of Master 2 speakers that were made probably in the early, well, those radios were old when I started there in 84, so they were probably made in the mid-70s. And I had them up until 5 or 6 years ago when I moved. I would still have them now if I didn't have a whole bunch more of the Motorola ones, which happen to fit my aesthetics a little better. So, Chris uses a bunch of stereo speakers from thrift shops. The small ones, you get those for like $3 a piece. So if you have a Goodwill or a Salvation Army store in your area, take a look in there every once in a while. My wife hates it when I go in those places because it's just, I don't want to buy any more junk or something that somebody else gave away. But you never know what you're going to find in there. And I've heard stories of people going in there. Some guy wrote in one of the forums a couple of years ago that he went to a Goodyear store and bought an ICOM 746 for $40.
Oh my God! Because they don't know what the value is. Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is you're going to find that when people are cleaning out the. Oops, I'm dropping the bottle. When they this right here, I got my own thing here, but I could do that too. But yeah, when they don't know the value. So when someone's cleaning out the house after someone dies, and they don't know what the value is, and they send it over to one of these places, and then $40 is good enough for this, whatever the hell this contraption is.
Yeah, well, that's why my wife has got listed names of people to call to take care of my radio stuff. If I get hit by the bus or have the big heart attack or something like that, so she knows who to call to get rid of the radios and actually find out. And God help, thankfully I'll be dead because then she'll realize how much money I've actually got sunk into this stuff.
Yes, and hopefully she's not watching this with the closed captioning on.
No, she's. I think she's watching CNN. She's fascinated by the inauguration, so she's watching that. All right. So spatial distribution also works by locating the scanners on different sides of your normal position. So if you don't have external speakers, you can actually put the scanners on either side if
Yes.
you want to separate the audio. And that's not bad. Blah, blah, blah. That's not a bad way of doing it, because then you know if you hear the audio here, you know to look over here for the display. When you hear the audio over here, now you still got to look over here if you're using external speakers and all your scanners are over here. But if you hear it over here, now you can go over here to see the display or to hit the volume control. So having the scanner on either side might be more effective than just the speaker.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways. If you got your stuff rack mounted, the speaker would be a good option.
All right, so Nubs, I guess his name is. He has the NCS 3230 speaker multi-switcher, and if this is the one I'm thinking about, it's like National Communication System or something like that. It's like a what do you call it? A mixer box made specifically for scanners, and there was a company that made them, and I've tried to buy one of those several times over the years, but every time they pop up in the classifieds or something like that, they go quickly. But basically, you can connect a bunch of scanners into this mixer and have select and unselect speakers and individual volume controls and level controls. It's really a neat contraption if you got multiple scanners. And they only made a very limited amount of them, and whenever they come up for sale, they command a premium price. And even when I'm willing to pay that price, they go quickly. So, Joe likes my new shelving layout. I changed things around a little bit recently, and there's going to be some more changing to my desk in a week or so when the parts come in that I ordered. So they'll be maybe they'll be in by the next week's show. If not, they'll be in the week after. But I will be doing a new video with the current layout of the shack probably in the next week or two, maybe 2 weeks. Framingham ordered his GPS, and it should be here tomorrow. So you'll have a lot of fun with that. And he'd also like to hear more about monitoring railroads. Go back. We did some shows about monitoring railroads on the scanner, both on this channel and on the Trained Aficionado.
Yeah, so it's the, I want to say it's either episode 2 or 3 on the Trained Aficionado channel. So definitely look for that.
Absolutely. And we've done a couple Scanner Guy shows on railroads as well. So Will, my buddy Will, who I've known for 35 years now, I guess, he wants to know the difference between the BCT 15 and the 15X. So he's got the original 15, which is a secondary scanner. So the BCT 15 came out about the same time the 996T and the 396T came out. The 15X does everything the 15 did, but it also allows you to use the same programming cable or software as the XT series. So ArcXT is used on that. There are a few differences in the way the dial lighting works and some other minor updates. The Firetone out feature works better, and there's a few minor tweaks that the 15X has over the 15. So they're pretty similar in a lot of respects, but there's just enough differences to get a different model number. And it handles sites. You can add individual sites instead of having to program a trunking system in multiple times. If there's multiple sites, it does handle site trunking like an XT does. So, okay, there you go. Railfan with the scanner, October of 2020. And there's the link for your...
Yeah, the link is down in the chat, so that should be clickable. But yeah, I just figured to post that there.
Cool. All righty. So yeah, if you have a choice between a 15 and a 15X and it's only a couple dollars extra, go for the 15X. Otherwise, for the most part, if you're just doing conventional channels, they're pretty similar. The soft leather case for the SDS 100, have been any issues with the leather flaking off after a couple of years? I've not seen that. Have you?
No, I've had this since I had since we got the cases, and I haven't had any issues with it whatsoever. I guess it just depends on. I mean, it's going to depend on your usage. If you're using this day in and day out, you're definitely going to experience some wear and tear on it. But for the most part, I haven't had any issues with any of the cases whatsoever.
Yeah, and remember, the wear and tear on the case means that wear and tear didn't happen on the radio.
Yeah. So just think of the $30 or whatever you spent on the case. Saved the wear and tear on that radio, so it's well worth to buy a new case for $30, and you're protecting that radio.
I've got the soft leather case for my 436, and I've had that for since before I lived in Arizona, so 6 or 7 years, and I've not had a problem with that. So
there's the soft leather case on the 436. Soft leather case on the 125 AT.
Now we know where Jonathan keeps all his radios.
Nylon case. The nylon case on another 436. So yeah. I mean, and I've had these cases for a while. So
yeah.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize you could see.
They're high quality cases.
You can see on the camera. Yeah, because I have to have them close to me because of we never know, we might talk about it.
That's right. So,
this is a case we don't carry for the R20, ICOM R20. They have a soft leather case for that radio as well. I like cases on my radios, as you can tell.
Yeah, I don't use cases very often, but when I do, I like the soft leather. So, it's news media channels. They can be very informative. So yeah, absolutely. Except they don't use the radio nearly as much as they used to. A lot of that stuff is handled by cell phones these days, but back in the day, they used to use two-way radios all the time.
And a lot of television stations, if they do have a helicopter, they're still using two-way radio communication.
Yeah, there you go.
So if you know that one of the television stations in your market's using a two-way radio, definitely tune into some of their channels.
Absolutely. So Braden asks, how do you program a P25 conventional when it's a single channel, P25 frequency when it's a single frequency? That means it's conventional, not trunked. Mm-hmm. So on digital scanners, you can just put the frequency in and leave everything else blank, and it should pick it up in both analog and digital mode, or you can actually set the mode to all, and that way it'll pick it up in either analog or digital mode. Or if you know the NAC code, you can put that in, and then it will only pick up P25 channels with that particular NAC code. Some of these P25 conventional channels, if you program it as a single frequency trunked, they will use some of the trunking features, even though it's not a trunking systems, like radio IDs and maybe even talk group numbers. Even though it's a single channel, there's just no control channel. So if it's a P25 conventional, try programming it as a single frequency trunk. You'll see the radio IDs and maybe talk group numbers if they're using it. That's real common on DMR as well.
Yeah, and that's definitely a cool thing to do if you get some conventional stuff. I mean, I've done that, and I noticed that one town, the car numbers didn't match what they were displaying, so clearly they were swapping the radios around.
Yeah. The town I worked in, our mobile radios identified with the number of the car, and the portable radios identified with the officer's star number. Since I left, retired, they're now on the state digital system, so I don't know if they've continued that or if they just got assigned random numbers. So, for your SDS 100, if you are replacing that clip, you don't have to take the screws all the way out. Just back out all 6 screws enough to take the clip out of the radio. If you back the bottom screws out a little bit more than the middle set and the back set, the case can separate enough to pull the clip out, take the pin out, put it in the new clip, put the clip back in place, and then close the radio up on it, and you don't have to take the back all the way off.
And the key thing, take your time doing it and do it on a table. If one of those screws pop out and you're holding the radio, without the table, you're going to be looking all over the place for that tiny. The screws are tiny. And the other thing,
take a towel and put it on the table so it doesn't get scratched. And if the screw hits the towel, it doesn't bounce away.
And it's not going to roll away. because the towel's going to give it a terrain that's not easy to roll.
Yeah, soft landing.
Yes.
So, yeah. Or Chris says, put the screws in a coffee mug and push it away from you. So yeah, that's another thing you can do too. But like I said, if you don't take the screws out all the way, you're not going to lose them. So those are great tips, both of those. Kevin brought up exactly what I said there. All you have to do is loosen them up enough. So, yep, Kevin, you and I are thinking alike.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. That's, I was just thinking that, that's the same thing. I didn't loosen it all the way, but you can, like if you get overzealous, you could loosen it, enough that it pops out. So you don't want to lose any of the screws. Let's try not to hit the radios.
Yeah. Been there, done that. Les says sometimes they patch together channels, it seems. So your police channel might be patched to a fire channel at a scene so they can talk to each other. If that's the case, you'll be able to hear the police on the fire channel, and that might get you the ability to hear some of the encrypted channels at times. So, yeah, watch for patches. Any plans for this Latch Online? We're talking about the light for the things.
Just through his website. He's got a website that's available that's linked to the Radio Reference Radio Reference forums. There's if you're looking for these parts, just look it up on Radio Reference. There's no plans for Scanner Master to carry these. So you just got to order it directly from him.
Yeah, and as far as I know, he doesn't have his 3D printer plans online. So if you have a 3D printer and you're able to get a copy of his plans, you can make it yourself. I think since he sells these things, I don't think he's going to provide the plans for other people. But somebody might come up with a plan for it. And if they do, apparently that's a big thing. I don't have a 3D printer, but apparently that's a big thing in the 3D printer community is sharing plans back and forth so you can make your own. And so Tom, a great hint here from Tom. To get your latch on the SDS-100 to open more easily, slightly squeeze the battery in a little bit. And that there's the foam in the battery case gives it some spring tension. And I think they were a little heavy with that foam, so there's a lot of tension there. So if you squeeze that in, and it'll make the latch unlatch with less force and make it less likely to break. Let's see here. So apparently, Dan says that the clip is very good, and they make a special SDS 100 adapter, BNC adapter. That's machined by the same guy. So if you go to his website, again, you can find it through Radio Reference. He does have some pretty decent accessories. I don't have any of his stuff, but I've heard good things about him. Obviously, you have his clip. So while we can't vouch for anything other than what we've seen, I've heard a lot of good things about him.
Same here.
So apparently the plans are out there for those battery clips. So if you've got a 3D printer, Bob, do a little search. You should be able to find them. Dave says I rearrange my shack more often. He changes his socks.
Yeah, that's certainly true.
Well, the way I look at it in that respect, if you don't change your shocks, you have less laundry you have to do.
I thought you sound like you said if you don't change your shocks.
Yeah. No, socks. Those things you put on your feet.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean.
Okay, so I do change my socks at least every week. So so I do actually change my shack more often than that. So Jason apparently likes the things that he had considered. He hadn't considered separating out the channels, and now he will. So Jacksonville is a big town, so that's going to be very effective.
Yeah, I mean, these things tonight, it's going to hopefully, if anything, get you thinking, about
absolutely.
various things that you can do with your radios.
Yeah. Back in the day when we didn't have Radio Reference, we had newsletters and stuff. Scan America was one of them. And a big thing way back then in the 70s and 80s and maybe even into the early 90s were bulletin board systems. So Bob used to run a bulletin board that was basically Commodore 64 stuff, but he also ran the bulletin board that Karma, the Chicago area, used, and we did a lot of information and file sharing through his bulletin board or through his commuter bulletin board. And this was back in the old days when you had phone modems. You dial up a phone and stick it in an acoustic coupler, or later on, then you had actually direct connect modems, and you dial in a number, and then it would finally connect, and you could send data back and forth at 9600 baud, or 1400 or 14,000 baud, which nowadays is a snail's pace, but back then that was remarkable. And I would call up a bulletin board and hopefully get through without a busy signal. And if I wanted to download a 1 meg file, I would do that just before I went to sleep, and hopefully it would be done by the time I woke up in the morning if it didn't disconnect. But Bob ran a really good bulletin board for many years, and it was free. It was it was a labor of love. So. So Tim is going to buy an SDS 100. How long does it take to usually get one?
Depends. Typically, if you order it, let's say you order it tonight, and it doesn't require any programming services or upgrades, DMR Pro Voice and DMR that we're going to do, it would ship out. Order it now. It would ship out tomorrow. You would get a tracking number after 3 p.m. Eastern Time. If it required programming services, well, that depends on the workflow. Typically, we say 2 to 3 business days, but it could take a week to 2 weeks. But usually it's about 2 to 3 business days with any programming services. So it just depends. If you're just ordering the scanner without any programming or services, if you ordered it right now, it would ship out tomorrow, and then you would get a tracking number after 3 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah, any scanner that's ordered without programming, usually before lunchtime or a little bit after lunch, will normally ship out that day. Anything that's done after shipping is done with the when the truck is there to pick us stuff up. Obviously, it's going to go out the next day, but we are getting a lot faster on our programming orders as well, so that we're catching up there. Another bulletin board was called the Louisiana Frequency Exchange. There were a bunch of regional scanner clubs, newsletters, bulletin boards out there over the years. So I was a member of a bunch of them in Illinois and Wisconsin, so there were bunches of them out there. Chris has got a Pro 96, and he's having some issues on the Michigan State trunking system. So they've got 83 counties in Michigan. Some of the counties use 700 megahertz on that system, and those will not work on an older scanner like the Pro 96 or a 796, since those don't cover 700 megahertz. So it might be time to replace your Pro 96 with a 325 or somewhat newer scanner that will work on 700. Les was obviously in Canada because they had the Heretic frequency guide, which was the Canadian version of Police Call, as it were. So I used to have the Quebec version, and I think there was an Ontario version as well, because I spent a lot of time traveling in Canada back in those days, and they were really well done frequency guides, and a lot of good information were in those. So let's see here. So a lot of the stuff we talked about does work on the TRX scanners. I know we key in on the Unidents much more, but like we spoke of before, a lot of the stuff we talked about works on the TRXs, except for the GPS stuff, of course. Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Excluding the SDSs, what scanner would we consider our favorite standouts over the years, base and handhelds? I would have to go with the 436 and 536 series. It gives you pretty much the best of both worlds. You can do field programming from the keyboard, or you can use the zip code or the computer. And the home controls are great, but you can't do field programming like you can with the 536.
For me, the first portable scanner that had true alpha tag display was the 246, which was a favorite of mine. I actually have two of those. The 780 XLT was another big favorite of mine. Looking ahead to the current generation, outside of the Home Patrol, 536, 436. Same for me. The Home Patrols do have a place. Home Patrol 1 and 2.
Right here at my desk.
Yep, me too. But yeah, I mean, I use those for travel, camping trips, or going, going an overnight stay at a hotel. It's easy to throw in. It's small, compact. But yeah, I mean, same reasons for 436, 536 as Rich. You're able to have best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the 780 was the scanner that really kind of was the most well-received new scanner out there. I mean, it just hits so many buttons. Lots of memory for the time, lots of capabilities for the time. It just was really, when that scanner dropped, it was just like, wow. And I had 6 of them at one time, which back then they were $500 a piece. And that was about what about $1,000 is these days, because that was almost 20 years ago. And, so that was a lot of money. And I saved up for a long time to get my first one, much less all the other ones that I ended up buying over the years. So Les says you can use your analog scanners to park on single channels like the Marine Distress Channel, or in my case, the aviation channels and stuff. So, yeah, absolutely. You can, don't throw away those old analog scanners. They're still very useful. Braden asks what the benefit of putting PL tones into a scanner, other than differentiating between the two frequencies that are close by. PL tones are used basically to exclude listening to other stuff. So if you don't need to listen to other agencies that use that same channel, or a nearby adjacent channel if they're so close you get interference. Otherwise, I usually have PL search set up on my scanners so I can look at a PL and use that as kind of a fingerprint.
I would agree with that as well. I mean, in NASCAR races, I know Dale has gone to his fair share of those. PL tone is your friend. It's an RF nightmare when you go to a NASCAR race. So what you want to do is you want to program in your favorite driver's frequencies. Typically on the Racing Electronics sheet that you get at the hauler, it only has the frequencies. So as Rich mentioned just moments ago, having PL tone or DPL search, have that on your 125 AT. Second it comes up, store it, because it's an RF mess with everybody using UHF, excuse me. But yeah, PL tones are your friend, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So Kevin is looking for a tour of my attic. You really don't want to see up there. Actually, it's a big attic, but there's so much stuff up there between the antennas, the joists,
the HVAC system.
The HVAC system is up there. It's very difficult. I actually had a friend of mine come in and do a lot of the attic crawling for me, because I couldn't get back into those corners myself, and he was much more nimble and less heavy than I am, so he was able to go back there and do it. So it's really not much to look at, but it's there. My next house is going to have a cathedral attic, and where all the insulation is not blown in, but it's actually tacked up to the top of the attic versus the floor. And that'll make life a lot easier. But my next house isn't going to have an HOA, so that means I'm going to have a tower out there. And Dale mentions we go way back on Radio Reference. I do have videos and pictures of when we took out the wall. We literally took out half the wall and back of where my radios are now. Took the drywall down, ran the coaxes, cut the hole for the panel, and then taped the wall. And then the painters came in and painted the wall. So I actually hired a carpenter to do that stuff. And so they took the wall down and drilled the hole in the cap and ran the coaxes for me. And then all I had to do was have my buddy Joe come out and help me mount the antennas in the attic, connect them to the coaxes, and then later on I had the patch panel made. So yeah, there's a lot of videos on that at Radio Reference. And my videos are on YouTube as well, and pictures. So programming the radios to your specific liking is half the fun. So he only uses the zip and the GPS when he travels. So exactly what we do. We program our radios for our local stuff that we listen to all the time individually, and then we use the full database, the zip code mode, for when we're out driving around. So Messy Shack asks if that is a clock at the top of the rack. Let me move the camera up a little bit. Yes, it is. That is a clock I bought on eBay. It's and in fact, in one of my shack pictures, I do have the link to that. But you can get those on eBay. That's a 5-inch tall characters on there, and my buddy from Ohio liked that clock so much, but he wanted it in blue, and he found one on Amazon, which is very similar to that, but with big blue letters, numerals. And I wanted to get that. My wife won't let me get it for now, but one of these days she'll let me get that. I like the blue better, and they didn't have the blue one when I bought that. But I like those great, big, huge clock numbers. My wife likes them because we got one like that in the bedroom. So when she wakes up in the middle of the night, wants to see what time it is, she doesn't have to pick up her glasses to see the clock. I don't wear glasses, so I can see the clock without it. But she likes it because she can see it from across the room without having to put on her glasses. So, and let's see here. Can you get the extended upgrade for the Home Patrol 2 like the Home Patrol 1 had? Yep. It's called the Extreme Update. And it has the same features on the Home Patrol 2 as it had on the Home Patrol 1. The Extreme Update is, I think, $75 when you buy it from us. A little bit less if you buy it directly from Union if you already have the radio. That adds the ability to do virtual control with software that supports it, like Arc Patrol or ProScan. It adds the ability to do some field programming directly onto the radio. It allows you to do some analytics on the radio. And a few other things. So if that type of stuff appeals to you, then you can spend a little bit extra money to get the Extreme Update. It does not add things like DMR or NXDN or Pro Voice to Home Patrol, which does not work in either version. But you can do that. Les asked if we ship to Canada. We certainly do. We haven't had any problems. Every once in a while, the package will get intercepted by customs, and they'll make you pay for the customs duties, but that's kind of hit or miss, and we don't have any control about that. So, if you get hit by customs, unfortunately, that's on you. There's not much we can do about that. Evan asks if there is a video to show how to replace the battery latch for the SDS 100. I haven't seen any, Jonathan. Have you?
No, but if there's a call for it, I could open my radio up again and do it over again. But yeah, that's something that we could definitely do. We're looking to put in on this channel. That's a part of our expansion that we're looking to get people to sign up for the newsletter. Eventually, we do the survey. Would you guys like to see some pre-produced programming? something that's not in the live format that you're seeing here, something of our own, how-to videos, that are produced. I have a production studio here, so I'm able to cut video and post it as a produced type of thing versus a live segment. And, that may be something that we maybe want to start off with. I mean, it's a short video just showing you how to do something as simple as that. And unfortunately, it's not a Scanner Master product. So it would be great for the Scanner Guys channel because, so we could definitely do that.
Okay, so it looks like I misspoke and my dyslexia was kicking in there. So what Evan actually wrote is there is, not is there. So apparently there is a video out there to show you how to do the video latch. So if you do a search on that. So sorry about that, Evan. My eyes got crossed on that.
Well, the Scanner Guys could do one too. More videos, the merrier.
And we'll do a much better job of it too. So we have a much better video editor than the other guys do.
All right.
And that is the extent of our questions, my friend.
Awesome. So that was, if you made it this far in the broadcast, thank you so much for joining us for this show. I mean, this was a very interesting show. The best thing I want to recommend is, thinking outside the box. There's no wrong way of doing these things with programming your scanner. I would seriously recommend, taking a look at some of your scanners, especially if you've got a shack where you've got a couple of scanners, and take a look at the programming. I mean, it's definitely going to be the key thing. Just want to remind you of a couple of things. While you're watching this, if you're not a subscriber to the Scanner Guys YouTube channel, do that now. Hit the bell for notifications. And you also want to follow us on all of our social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. We're there. We're going to be using those platforms a lot more in the near future. You may find on Facebook, we may pull a live Facebook random where Rich and I go live on Facebook. So definitely follow us on Facebook and certainly subscribe to us here. And the newsletter, Scanner Guys, type that into Google. Pull up the Weebly website, scannerguys.weebly.com. Newsletter. Subscribe to that. We're going to start using some of our social media and newsletter tools a little bit more frequently. So good stuff coming to you. Exclusive stuff. I mean, our brand is growing here a lot on social media. We want to remind you, of course, that if you've got questions or you need help ordering a scanner, great place to purchase that. A scanner or accessories is through Scanner Master. You can give them a call Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time at 1-800-722-6637. If those hours are not convenient for your questions, drop an email, support@scannermaster.com. And as always, you can shop the safe and secure website 24/7 at scannermaster.com. We also want to remind you, next week, we're getting questions about the SDSs. We're going to talk about them next week in detail. The SDS 100 and 200 should be a good show to wrap up the month of January 27th of 2021, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Join us here. We are looking forward to an SDS talk. And don't forget, Train Aficionado Live, the first Monday of every month. Next show will be Monday, February the 1st of 2021, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. That is over on the Train Aficionado YouTube channel. So if you have some interest in trains, check us out. We'll be on that show as well. And social media. Train Aficionado's got it all as well. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. Follow, like, and subscribe. Check out the blog. I will have a couple of new blog posts posting within the next couple of weeks. Some really interesting ones for tools to use while you're out rail fanning. And follow, like, and subscribe, of course, to Scanner Master on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And once again, Scanner Guys, follow, like, and subscribe to all of our social media there. We're going to have some exclusive content that you're not going to see on the Scanner Master pages. So definitely follow, like, and subscribe to those channels as well. And as always, the Scanner Guys are brought to you by Scanner Master. And, some people are subscribing to our newsletter right now, so definitely do that. Great show, as always. Rich, anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's pretty much it. We appreciate each and every one of you. We do understand that sometimes on YouTube you can't do that subscribe button, or not the subscribe, but the notification buttons. I've seen that on some instances where you cannot get notifications. Sometimes it works, so it works for me, but for some reason it doesn't work for everybody. But
just hit subscribe. If there's no bell for notification, at least we'll come up in your feed. If you're a frequent person of YouTube, you'll see our newest videos posting up on your page. And as always, you can watch every one of our videos since we started on YouTube back last year, exclusively on YouTube. You can watch a whole season of the Scanner Guys. And if you're not able to watch this show on Wednesday night, immediately after this post to YouTube, so you can watch it anytime you want. That's it for this evening. I'm Jonathan Higgins.
I'm Rich Carlson.
Have a great night. Be safe. We'll catch you again next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.